In this video, I'm going to go over feedback and ideas for Battle Aces after participating in the closed beta. Just to start off, I think this game is absolutely amazing. I really like the direction they're going with it. I'm a huge fan of the RTS genre, and I haven't been this excited for an RTS game in a very long time. I might make a separate video on the things I'm excited about, but in this one, I'm just going to go over feedback and ideas. I had just kind of taken some notes while playing the beta, and I finally compiled them here. You can see pretty much everything I'm going to go over is on the screen right now, so you can certainly just read it if you prefer. I'm basically going to go through it all and then maybe elaborate on some of these points. For the in-game UI, I think it'd be good to have some way of indicating what units are currently selected. In a lot of other RTS games, like StarCraft 1, they have that box at the bottom side of the screen that shows you the 12 units you have selected. Something like that I think would be really helpful. I know they're trying to save as much real estate for the actual game as they possibly can, so this could be a lot smaller. It could maybe even be transparent or something, and it could also be optional. So I think that'd be pretty handy. Um, the ability to review the opponent's deck during countdown would also be handy. So during the closed beta, there's a 5-second countdown, and you couldn't actually view the opponent's deck till after the game started. So I think that'd be helpful to look ahead of time and be thinking about what you want to do that game before the game actually starts. As far as out-of-game menus UI, one thing I found a little deceiving was the way the units looked while building the deck. Some units just appear a lot bigger than they are in game. One example was the advanced blink unit. In the deck building window, it just looks huge. And before I had actually seen that unit in the game, I didn't really know how big it was, and that made me think it was like this big, huge, bulky unit. So I think just tuning how those look to make them more representative of what you might see in game, like making that wasp look a little bit smaller and so forth, would be helpful. For some general ideas, it'd be nice to queue and I mean immediate expansion or an immediate tech at the very start of a game. Again, so you have that 5-second countdown, and in the closed beta, you kind of had to just like spam the key when you were getting down to the 1 second mark, if you wanted to do it as soon as possible. But just being able to click it during the countdown and have it lock in would be just kind of nice. Second bullet here under general is the option to choose where you expand. So I for this initial closed beta, I did like that it was super simple that you just press the expand key and then it just goes in order, from that second position, third position, fourth position, fifth position. But I think in the long term, I think you should give players the option of where they want to expand. And mortars are kind of what come to mind in that, where you might be playing against a mortar player that has mortars just set up on top of your third position, and you may not have an expansion there, and maybe you just can't retake that position to take that expansion, but you could take the fourth position, and you could defend that. I think it'd be just nice to have that option to expand there instead, and that would kind of mimic other RTS games too, where that might be a factor in where you choose to expand. The third bullet under general is multiple ranked profiles within reason. I don't think it should be completely unlimited, but at least maybe like 2 or 3 different profiles for ranked play, where each could have their individual rank. I think would be nice, because you might be playing a number of different deck styles, and maybe there's one you're a lot better at or a lot more confident in, that you're really trying to push your MMR as high as you can on that one, but you want to do some experimentation while still playing ranked play, but with a completely different deck or completely different style. And it'd just be nice to have that secondary profile that's maybe a lower MMR, that you can do that for. So I think that'd be nice. We definitely need the ability to select colors, like completely full control from the player's perspective. Like you pick your own color, you pick your opponent's color. And then beyond that, you also can pick the colors of your health bars, the colors of the mortar radius, and the colors that your units show up on the minimap. I think this is really important, just for ease of use. During the closed beta, I believe it seemed like every player was randomly assigned a color at the start, and they were just stuck with that for the entirety of the beta. I got purple, and if I played against another purple opponent, then it was pretty hard to see whose units were who. You kind of had to stare at the health bars themselves to kind of figure out what units were what, especially if you had the same units as your opponent. Definitely made it very confusing. And of course, this will absolutely be necessary for players with color blindness, and they're out there, so we need to accommodate that for sure. Um, Replays would be really handy. I'm sure they'll include it at some point. It'd be great if they could include timestamps for when expansions and tech choices happen, so that you can just kind of click and snap to those points in the game, and watch from those points. More control groups would be great. I think they only had 4 during the closed beta, but yeah, we should have at least 10. 1 through 9 plus 0, and abilities to remap those, anywhere on the keyboard would be nice too. A sandbox or training mode would be super handy, to review and practice different unit interactions, kind of in an environment outside of a game. I think that'd be really handy. It would be great if you could do that solo or with a friend, and maybe you could even tie that in with the replay feature, where you could play a replay, pause it, and then take control of the replay from a particular moment. And then maybe you have a buddy that jumps in, they could take control of the opponent, you could take control of yourself there, and then kind of replay out like an in-game scenario that you had to see if certain decisions or better micro might have changed the outcome. I think that'd be really cool. Um, and then this next bullet, I'm not 100% sure about this, but it sort of seemed like there might have been issues with binding control groups. There were times where I quickly had to set up like 3 control groups, and I'm boxing and setting up control groups, and then I go to click on my numbers, and like they're just not set up right. And in those moments, I typically just blame myself. I just thought, okay, I must have clicked something wrong. But yeah, I was having problems that I just wasn't having when I was playing StarCraft Remastered, which I was playing a bit leading up to the closed beta. And I did hear Tasteless actually complain about this same thing, on a stream or in a YouTube video at one point as well. So that made me think maybe I'm not crazy. Maybe it was some sort of issue. So maybe just a bug, something that they'll fix and smooth out in the future, I'm sure. If it indeed even was an issue, but yeah. Um, and then the last one in this general section here is ability for some units to push other units out of the way. So I saw an update from Stormgate actually, where they had some larger units that were able to just push other smaller units out of the way. Like if there's a big bulky melee unit and smaller ranged units that were kind of in the way, it was able to just kind of push them out of the way to get to the front line. I think that could be really cool. One thing I noticed, at least and I got over this, I just figured out how to manage my units. Um, but in some of my very early games, I would have Hornets in my army, and they would create a concave, so they'd create this really long line, and then it'd have like a king crab behind it that would just get stuck, and then it'd have to go all the way around this huge line unless I, you know, took a couple Hornets and broke them apart so that there was room for it to go through. Um, Battle Aces does have the physics for this already, it seems like, because if you have idle units and you send units through a group of your idle units, they do actually push them apart. So it'd be nice if maybe some of that behavior could happen um, while your units are attacking or while they're on an attack move. And of course, you got to balance that with, um, you don't want to make everything in the game too easy that anybody can do anything. You do want to maintain some things that have to be microed in order to have skill expression, and kind of separate players that are able to do certain micro things better than others. So yeah, so I don't have like a super strong opinion on it. It's just something to consider and think about. Yeah, so it's the general section. For ranked play, I think it would be really fun to have a best of 3. I'm not the only one that said this. I know a lot of other people have said this might be a really cool idea, to have it built into the game. Um, and you could even have some form of unit bans or counter picking in between games that could be really interesting. There's countless ways you could set that up, so I won't really go through the possibilities there, but that could be really exciting. I know during the closed beta, I had a really good time getting rematched with players. If I liked whether I won or lost, if I just had a interesting game with an opponent, I tried to queue right away and try to get them again, and that just led to um, really fun games where we're kind of learning from each other, and kind of adapting to the game before, and it was a blast. So I think some sort of best of 3 would be really cool, and capable because of how short the games are with Battle Aces. So it's not often you have an RTS where that's even really viable because of how long games are typically. But Battle Aces is the game to do it. So um, Couple points for mortars. It would be good to have a separate hotkey for siege and unsiege. This is something that StarCraft Remastered provides players, is the option to do that. And when I was recently playing Remastered, I certainly did that, and that definitely made things handy because you're never doing the opposite of what you intend at that point, and you might accidentally select a group of siege tanks where some of them are siege, some of them are unsieged. What's going to happen when you press that button? It can get a little messy, but yeah, separate keys is huge. Um, and then the other idea is to allow them to queue the siege mode after a move command. And I don't know if this was already a thing. I didn't actually test it, but the idea here is just to you have a mortar that's unsieged. You give it a move command, and then just like how you would hold shift to like give a second move command, you could like shift and then press the siege ability key, and that'll queue it up so that he'll walk to that position and then siege as soon as he gets there. And meanwhile, you can go somewhere else on the map and micro something else, basically. So that'd be pretty cool. All right, this next section is on keybinds. This first idea is kind of weird, but bear with me. So I think you could actually remove the tab key entirely, the tab key being to select the core, and then just have your unit production bound to completely separate keys on your keyboard, so they'd be separate from your attack move and unit control, separate from any unit abilities that you would have. They'd just be on different keys on the keyboard, and then there's no need to actually hit tab to select the core. You would just you just have your army selected, and at any point you can just hit the key on your keyboard that corresponds to unit production, and it'll produce that unit. The only issue with this might be setting the rally. So typically, you need to hit tab and then right click to set the rally, but you could certainly set the rally to a different button. It could be on middle mouse, for example, and then that basically would solve that problem. So I think that could be an interesting idea. And maybe that's unintuitive for people that play other RTS games. Um, so maybe it's not the default, but it could be cool if that was made an option at least. This next one is option for a single button that issues an attack move at your current cursor position, which would reduce two actions, A and click, to a single action. And it maybe could be bound to like a side mouse button or something. And that could make stutter step kiting a little bit easier. So instead of right click, A, left click, right click, A, left click over and over again, it would just be like left click, side mouse click, left click, side mouse click. And that could just make that a little bit easier. And if a player wants to, they could bind it to like a key on the keyboard, I suppose. But might make more sense to have it on one of those side buttons. This next one is to have separate keys for stop and hold position. So currently in the closed beta, the S key was more like a hold position key where the units just won't move no matter what. But I think just a regular stop key that just stops them in their place but makes them more in like the idle state where they'll chase units if they get attacked or whatever. I think that does have a place in the game too. Maybe it's not used as often as other unit commands, but I think it has a place. And I think it'd be nice to be able to have that in the game. And if for some reason that's unintuitive to have a stop and hold position, you could leave the default how Battle Aces currently has it, but at least just in the settings somewhere, just have that option for like a stop, a version of stop that just makes them idle. And then patrol button would be handy too. Maybe that was in there and I just didn't notice it, but yeah, adding patrol would be great. And then this last idea is to give the ability to press multiple control group buttons simultaneously to select them together. So one thing I did a lot as a King Crab player was separate my King Crabs and my Scorpions into two separate groups. Not the King Crabs and the Scorpions by themselves, but like a mixture of both in one and a mixture of both in two. So I typically split my armies like that, and then I still might have another control group for harassing, and then I still might have a King Crab at home. So I didn't want to use the control all to select both groups, but it would be kind of cool if I could press 1 and 2 at the exact same time to select them both together, and then do like an attack move with like that if I kind of get them in a pincer position and want to flank like that. And the last thing I want to go over was just some unit ideas. So one thing with the tier 1 anti-air, at least per the stat pips they had on the website, all the tier 1 anti-airs had a range of 2, And one thing that would frequently come up is that the ground units are just in the way, and then your tier 1 anti-air units just can't get in position to fight other air units. And that was one of the big reasons why the Blink Hunter was an extremely popular choice for tier 1 anti-air, because that blink ability helped overcome that weakness. Hornets I thought were also a pretty good choice because of just their raw speed. The Hornet was the anti-air of my choice for most of the beta. Um, but yeah, I think it'd be cool to have a tier 1 anti-air that had like that 3 of 5 range, just a bit more range, in order to just help them just be in range and make it a little bit easier. Um, and of course, with having more range, you'd have to balance it. Maybe this particular tier 1 unit would be weaker than the other ones. Um, and alternatively, it could be different costed. Like maybe it costs more energy. So maybe instead of 75-25, it's like 50-50 or something like that. So there's a really impactful trade-off where if you're making this tier 1 anti-air, you're just not going to have as much energy for whatever your tier 2 or tier 3 plan is. So that could be like an interesting trade-off there. And then there's just so many other ideas you could pull from other RTS games units. And I just threw like a couple ideas, but you could go on and on. And of course, I imagine the team is thinking about these types of things. But yeah, just for a few examples, the StarCraft 2 Colossus I found really interesting. You know, it was a super tall unit that both ground attacks and air attacks can hit. I think that's like a really cool concept. StarCraft 2 Cyclone, just in the sense that it's a ground unit that can move while shooting. I think maybe the Raider in Battle Aces could do that, but for the most part, I think all the ground units had to stop to shoot. So that could be interesting. StarCraft 1 Mutalisk I threw in there, more so just for like the bouncing mechanic where its attack hits 3 separate units every time it attacks. I think that could be interesting. StarCraft 1 Firebat, some sort of close range splash unit could be interesting like that. Warcraft 3 Crypt Fiend, some sort of ground unit that has like a web ability or something that ensnares air units and makes them vulnerable to ground units attacking them. Could be kind of cool. And then a whole host of other spellcaster units might be interesting. Um, the spellcasters might be something Battle Aces wants to avoid, and I could totally understand that. Could just kind of open a can of worms. Um, but it might be cool to have things like Storm or Stasis or maybe the force field from the Sentry in StarCraft 2. The list just goes on and on. But yeah, that's pretty much everything I wanted to share as far as feedback and ideas for Battle Aces. I just wanted to put these ideas out there, see what people thought, maybe get the Battle Aces dev team's attention with some of these. But otherwise, I've just been having a lot of fun with the closed beta. I think this game is going in a great direction. I have a lot of confidence in the dev team and the decisions they'll make going forward. They're definitely going to do what's in the best interest of the game. Whether it includes some of these or not doesn't really matter. I'm really looking forward to future betas and especially when the game comes out eventually. So yeah, that's pretty much all I had. So I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks.